Hello and welcome to West Coast style South Beach sessions here. I'm a little afraid of this man. He is one of the smartest comedians that there have been, probably the darkest, one of the darkest, and he likes that I'm afraid. Look at him. Anthony Jeselnik, he's got
Salutations. Welcome to Podcast with me, Lily Abernathy. Well, this is going to be a fun one, isn't it? Episode 30. Scarsclub Soulja.
He's got a tour. You can get his new special, Bones and All, on Netflix. AnthonyJeselnik.com is where you go for tickets. Thank you for being with us here.
Thank you for having me, Dan. I'm a fan. A lot of my friends have been on your show, and I've just been waiting until I get my turn.
Okay, excellent. You also have a best friend who's a sports writer. I don't think have you ever done any of these where the first question is about the Jeselnik and Rosenthal Vanity Project?
What a gay name for a podcast. Might as well call it Two Closeted Dudes Blow Each Other.
No, never. No, that's like the last thing on my resume. People do not bring it up. But in the sports world, they know Greg more than they know me, which is great. Greg and I have been best friends for 25 years now. Went to college together at Tulane, ended up in LA together. And I kind of was there as he decided I'm going to get into sports writing, and now is with the NFL.
And what is that friendship like? And why is it that you're doing that with him? Is it an interest in sports or just an interest in rekindling something with an old friend?
I'm interested in busting a load in his bestie's mouth. That's what he's interested in.
I'm interested in sports. There's only a handful of people in the world that I can sit in a room with twice. You know, you were not on that list yet. This is going great so far.
I'm aspiring to it, though.
People always wanted me to do a podcast.
This is just going to be closeted gay energy, the whole fucking podcast, isn't it?
Me to do a podcast. And the only way I would do it, I don't want to have guests. I don't want to have to do the booking that you have to do. I'm sure that's a pain in the ass, even though you don't do it. So I thought if I just sit with my friend, and we started doing it at the NFL Network. It was like a guerrilla project where I would just come in secretly and put it out on their feed. And we kept waiting for Greg to get fired. And at the end of the season, the NFL was like, get out of here. We don't want to get you to get in trouble, but like go. And then we started the podcast again. And now we're with All Things Comedy. And I've been there for a while.
It's a different choice for you because surely you're watching everything that's happening in comedy, the way that podcast has sort of replaced what radio used to be. And you have chosen a specific economic lane with a friend that is apart from some of the other stuff, because you doing a daily podcast, people would want access to you to see what your funny sounded like every day.
Sure. I mean, we do this once a week. Again, no guests. We don't talk about anything serious. It's very goofy and it's not successful.
Pretty much sums up his career.
You know, not a lot of people watch it, but that's fine because I make my money from stand-up. Greg makes his money from talking about sports. We don't want it to be the podcast. I think a lot of comics have gotten bad because they make too much money from the podcast.
First shot at Rogan.
And so they're putting too much effort into that. I want my effort to go toward the stage.
Oh, you think it's been a little poisonous for the industry? The cotton candy of how sloppy you can be in a form 3 times a week,
absolutely,
as opposed to the way you do it, which is clearly sculpted very carefully.
More closeted gay energy.
I mean, the podcast isn't sculpted. We're just going out there and doing it. But I think people have made so much money from podcasting that it's made stand-up comedy as an art form worse.
I actually agree with him here, but I also think that stand-up is kind of antiquated now.
I think that's without question is happening. People are making more money. If your success is making money, you're doing just as well. But if it's about making the art of stand-up comedy great, it's suffering. It's gotten bad.
I want to talk to you biographically about how you became who you became. And I don't know how close I can get here separating who you actually are versus the character you've created that has a persona that is unlike any that's allowed in comedy at the moment, where it seems like you have a lane where you can get away with things that no one else can get away with because your character is so finely honed on, I'm an offensive comic. I go right to the edge of the dark line and over.
Thank you. I saw someone describe it online as it's like my character just thinks that being an asshole is cool.
Wow. So he's openly admitting to playing a character on stage, even though he acts the exact same way in real life. He's like a Fairfax knockoff Larry David.
And so he's just bragging about all the cool he's done. It couldn't be less cool. It's insane. But the audience has kind of latched on to the logic of the character. And I can get away with just about everything.
For someone that's been so publicly open about Tony Hinchcliffe's ego, this is hilarious. This must be like what those kids in The Lion, The Witch, and The Wardrobe felt like when they got those shitty Turkish delights.
Everything.
How did you create the character? Like, how did you get confident in creating the persona that would lead to the success that you wanted as the person who wasn't the persona?
The first step was faking the confidence. You know, I'm sure when you started, being on TV yourself, you were faking it. You have no idea what you're doing and you're terrified. And you faked that for a while. And I noticed that the audience didn't like me because of what I looked like. I was like a skinny, 23-year-old white kid who looked like everyone else on the lineup, of this show. And they didn't like me. So I thought, okay, playing a villain is interesting. Let's see if I can pull it off. And I was able to. And the more I played with that and leaned into being a jerk, and I know you don't like me, but I'm so good, you have to laugh anyway, it just took off for me.
That takes even more confidence, right? Than doing that.
Kind of,
Embracing villainy.
But the audience lets you, the audience tells you you're on the right path. We're laughing at this. So that certainly helped. But yeah, it was a confidence to say, I'm just going to go with this. I want to be different. I want to be unique. And I want to push the art form a little bit.
Does pushing Amy Schumer's fat up the Hollywood ladder count?
And I was able to kind of find a way to do that. And it's aged with me. You see a lot of comics who get older and their act doesn't work anymore because they started out silly. They're like a frat guy. And then they're 50 and you're like, what the f is this?
Hey, Anthony, leave the Burt jabs to us folks at the BPN, all right?
But I thought that my character will outlive me, I think.
So gay.
So how did you do all of that, though? How did you get to the point of trial and error on what it is that, like, the early days of grinding through, how am I going to develop my voice? What is it that I'm going to chase and become?
You're going to so many open mics and you're just flailing, trying to find anything that will stick that they will laugh at. And so they didn't like me. I thought, well, what if I go up and I say, I don't like you either? You know, they would kind of laugh at that. And then I just leaned into it, or a joke wouldn't work and they would hate my joke. And I would say, oh, I'm sorry. I thought you guys were cool. And they would laugh at that. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. I'm finding new ways. You know, I remember Jay Moore came up to me after a show once. He was like, I've never seen anyone talk to the audience like you do. And I said, he was walking through the room and I was like, you know, I wasn't always a stand-up comedian. You know, I used to be a regular old piece of like you guys. And the audience, he's like, I couldn't believe you got them to laugh at it. Like, I think that's what my talent is, being 22 years in, is not so much the surprising punchline. It's getting you to believe me in the beginning of the joke.
So the thing every comic does. How impressive. Is Anthony on the list of Rogan's 100 stand-up comics?
When I say my uncle used to babysit me as a kid, I get you to believe that. And so people are just like, oh, they're truly surprised by the twist because I got them to buy in.
I think we can all believe his uncle diddled him.
When you say change the art form, like when you say my character will outlive me, where and how along the journey, how many years into the journey did you get before you were like, it's not merely that I want to do this, it's that I want to leave an impression?
It was more getting into the business and realizing that my other avenues weren't going to be as successful. I wasn't going to be an actor. I wasn't going to be a podcaster. I wasn't going to do a lot of the things that other comics can do. So I thought, let me just focus everything into stand-up, and I'm just going to get great at this. If you get a sitcom, it takes you away from stand-up. If you get SNL, it takes you away from stand-up. I'm like, I'm just going to commit to this. And then as I would come up with a new hour each time, I was surprised that I was able to come up with so many new jokes to fill an hour. And then once I started to get
Why does he keep listing things that is normal for a comedian to do? You're surprised you wrote new jokes?
To get like 3-4 hours, I was like, wow, if I can keep doing this, I can go for greatness, you know, and go for God level if I can keep it going for the next, 15 years. But it's just output.
What does your process look like? Is there suffering in how it is that you're a perfectionist and you make things and they have to be just so?
Not so much suffering, in terms of like I've got to go through depression or be upset. It's frustrating writing for sure. I mean, anyone who's ever written anything knows that. It's just a numbers game and putting the work in. I don't watch any stand-up when I'm working. And then when I go to write, I watch a new special every day and I find something that I don't like. And like, what do I want to attack about here? The first 15 minutes of my new special, Bones and All, is like a direct answer to Dave Chappelle's 10 years of anti-trans material. That I'm like, okay, how can I talk about this without complaining about it? Just showing you that you suck.
Oh, wow. So you go through, when you get going, you're watching the specials of others to like really look at the things that you don't like?
Usually that's what jumps out to me. It's not so much what I don't like. It's like, how would I have done this? I'm not even saying they're wrong. It just, that makes me think this would be a good way to take it.
What a unique approach to watch other comedians' specials and then say, hey, let me do a joke on how I would do that. Crazy, so many comics hate him.
I had to kind of wait until I could do a special or something with that. The roasts really helped, but still it wasn't that profitable. You're not going to see me in a lot of commercials,
Well, the Trump roast was the break, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you go right from there, from writer to, okay, I've got a career, right?
Yeah. I remember firing my agents because I had an agent as a writer. They just represented me as a writer. I was an actor or anything. And after the roast, it was like, well, now what am I going to do? Everyone in comedy is talking about me. And they're like, that's great, but what do you want to write on next? And I just fired him. It was like, I'm not a writer anymore. Like,
really?
Yeah. Those days are over.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So fucking cool.
Yeah.
Take me through all of that until that moment, though. So you're talking about 10 years of fear and doubt where you're wondering, am I hanging on too long?
Mm-hmm.
But you're not having the kind of success you expected, right? You're making a career, but you didn't expect for 10 years for it to be paycheck to paycheck.
I'm getting respect, but I thought that I would become a writer. I never thought that I would be a star myself. I thought I'm too dark for that. But comics who had a dark sense of humor will see me and say, come write for me. And Jimmy Kimmel asked me to write for him. Sarah Silverman asked me to write for her.
Ah, yes. Jimmy Kimmel and Sarah Silverman, known for their dark and edgy sense of humor.
A common cliche or trope is some idea that comedy comes from pain, but can you explain to me where your dark comes from?
I always thought dark was interesting, and I do not, to this day, I do not understand why it's so taboo. You know, I get that it might not be for the dinner table, but I don't understand why I was in trouble so much of my youth for being obsessed with death and thinking dark stuff was cool. Violent movies. Have you seen this movie, The Coffee Table?
I have not.
It's a Spanish horror film, and it is the most uncomfortable 90 minutes of your life. It's not gory. It's not like, oh, someone's getting tortured, but it is almost impossible to watch. And I watched it with a huge smile on my face and was delighted. And 99% of the population, it's unwatchable.
Maybe because it's a shitty film.
But I loved it so much, and that was kind of how I approached comedy. Is let me just try to do the things I think are interesting and a little taboo, but shouldn't be. It's natural. Everyone dies. And to just be hardcore. And those are the things that I looked up to. I didn't need to be the most famous guy. I get why Bert Kreischer is the biggest comedian in the world. But
He's not.
But I never wanted to be that.
Nobody does.
And it's less embarrassing. And then the movie Comedian came out. Did you ever see the movie Comedian?
I tell people about that movie all the time, and nobody's ever heard of it. And I'm like, you don't know how fascinating it is to see Seinfeld in a kitchen in Cleveland suffering the fact that he's got no act yet that he believes in, and watching Chris Rock and Seinfeld talk about Bill Cosby being, I can't believe more people haven't seen that movie.
Can't believe it. People tell me, how do I become a comedian? I say, watch that movie. And they look at me like, oh, it's 2 hours. I don't know. It should be like in museums. It's so perfect. I watch it at least once a year. I've watched the commentaries on that movie, but that movie taught me how to do it. Where I remember I walked from my house or my apartment to the theater, opening day at noon, saw that movie the day it came out and was like, got it. And then I just went to open mics every night.
There you have it, folks. Want to become a millionaire comedian like Anthony here? Well, just watch the movie Comedian and go to open mics.
Not that you would have an exact time and date for this kind of stuff, but do you know when you arrived at like this kind of confidence that you have where I don't need to compare myself to anybody. I do what I do, and my standard is the hardest standard. And so if I meet my own standard, I will have succeeded.
I remember becoming jealous of a comedian early on. And I'm not a jealous person ever. And all of a sudden, this new guy comes on the scene, and he's just killing it. And he's kind of like me a little bit different, not as dark for sure. Where I'm like, did I mess up? Did I go too dark? Did I mess up? Should I have done this? And it drove me crazy for a couple of weeks. And then one time I realized there's one thing about this comic that I would not have done, that I would never do. And I was like, oh, would I have ever done what this guy's doing for this? And it was like, when the answer was no, I realized, oh, then why are you worried about this? Like this guy, he wore a funny hat every time on stage or something. Like, would I ever wear the funny hat on stage? No. So then I was never jealous again of this person. And if you look closely, everyone's got a funny hat. Everyone's got something that you can say, I'd rather be me than be them. So it's been, once I had that, then I had the confidence to say, okay, I'm just doing my own thing. No one can really even give me helpful advice. Chris Rock has tried to be like, hey, say this instead of that. I think that'll work better for you. And he's wrong.
Chris Rock is wrong because he doesn't even write his own jokes.
When Norm Macdonald, I wonder what you think of this. He said, do you want to, I think he was talking about Bill Maher. There are a number of comedians you can do this with, I suppose. But he said, do you want to be a comedian or do you want to be a smart guy? Are you going to pick? Are you going to pick? Where are you philosophically on that?
Oh, I want to be a smart guy. Like Norman, and I love Norm Macdonald. He is my hero. He is one of my idols. We worked together on Last Comic Standing and did not get along. I took the job to work with him. Our philosophies were very different, and his criticisms of the other comics. He was a judge. I was the host. I was surprised by, and so it was just very different philosophically. All the respect in the world for Norm and what he did. It was amazing. I never try to replicate what he. Not that I would change anything about Norm Macdonald. It's very different.
You didn't get along though. You thought you were going to get along. You were hoping to get along, and one of your heroes.
I wanted to be best friends, but I think we were both, and we figured it out. But I think we were both a little disappointed in the job we had taken. And saw the other comedians on the show and what are we doing here? And so we were both not in the greatest of moods and then would butt heads a little bit. Like just because he's my idol didn't mean that I backed down at all. I kind of treated Last Comic Standing like it was my show and no one else thought that. And so yeah, we were gonna butt heads.
How very Hinchcliffe of him.
When I think of personas in comedy, I think of, and I hope this isn't an insult to you, because I remember Andrew Dice Clay was trying to pull something off and couldn't eventually at the end pull it off. You're doing all of that better than he did it.
Thank you.
Who else?
What's in the bowl? Oh,
Who else is it that you look at and say that person is in character? That person is not breaking character.
It's hard because everyone is doing a version of a character. Some are closer. You look at a guy like Richard Lewis, who we recently lost. Like, it seemed like he was doing a character. I remember Bob Odenkirk once described it as like sometimes there's a microphone in front of him and sometimes there's not. But he's just always doing that. Where I don't know that many people who have a persona the way that I do at this level. Now, everyone has a sheen of a persona. But I don't know if anyone's like as night and day. It's a light switch, and I still have it, in me in my regular life. But I don't know if anyone's as night and day as me.
But it's not you. That's what I'm saying is you're wearing a mask. You're in costume. You're and you're doing it, and it's your identity, but it's not really you. It's a bit of a mind like that you're doing it that extreme, right? Because this isn't you turned up to 10. This is you doing a person that is calculated, orchestrated to be an asshole occupying a different lane with the audience.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's great. It works as a performer, and as an offstage guy, it gives me a little bit of a buffer. I don't get, the comics who seem like your best friend on stage always seem like assholes off stage because they had to be. Because people were just like, oh, you're my best friend. I know from watching you on stage. If you come up to me, like, it's brave. Like, you must really be a fan, and you are taking your life in your own hands. That I enjoy that. If someone's a little nervous, like, I'm at ease. It's like, okay, I can handle it.
Taking your life into your own hands to meet a stand-up comedian. Someone thinks very highly of themselves.
Is there anything that you fear that you simply will not do? Like, you won't do it? That you say, nope, that's taboo?
It's not a fear, but I'll hear this. People would say, is there any line for you? I would not use a racial slur. I would not use an anti-gay slur. And I will make gay jokes. I will make racial jokes. But I think once you use the slur, I think you're dead in the water. I've thrown comics under the bus for using slurs before.
So edgy, but he won't say something like or ching chong bing bong, huh? He's thrown comics under the bus for other things as well. All right. So, Jeselnik and his condescending. Thanks for tuning in. I think we are going to work on the format a bit, but I'm sure we'll have another Scarsclub Soulja episode in the future. We hope everyone had a wonderful holiday and has a wonderful new year as well. Shout out Redbar and Jules. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share the podcast. Follow us at Podcast the Pod on YouTube and X, formerly Twitter. This is Lily Abernathy signing off. See you later, Space Cowboys.
Clayface lurking, Mike burning, no remorse. Mike David cutting through Scarsclub, the force. Soldiers ride grimy, ain't no time for weak talk. Red bar, sniper shots, every line's the chalk. Scars deep, scars earned, built in the fire. They fake, we flame set the liars on pyre. Soldiers move ghosts like shadows in the wire. Mike laugh loud, watch them all perspire. Clayface spitting with the villainous tone. We're sharp as a blade, aim high from the throne. Red bars the court, the jesters get clowned. Soldiers stay steady, 10 toes to the ground. We Scarsclub soldiers masked up with the heat. Mike David on the front, taking aim at the weak. Clayface on the rise, dropping villainous beats. Every verse cut deep, keep it cold, no retreat. We Scarsclub soldiers masked up with the heat. Mike David on the front, taking aim at the weak. Clayface on the rise, dropping villainous beats. Every verse cut deep, keep it cold, no retreat. Enemies fold when the soldiers march in. Mike taking shots like it's all in the wind. Laughing at the phonies, every fake grin's thin. Jules tell the story from the surface to within. Clayface wildin', don't sleep on the craft. Masked villain, leave him shook with the laugh. Feminine touch, but the bars hit wrath. Soldiers ride strong while they stumble the path. Mike drop bombs, the radar's too lit. Clayface in the cut, dropping venomous wit. No gimmicks, no filters, we raw to the grit. Every punchline's a brick, we stack till we split. We Scarsclub soldiers masked up with the heat. Mike David on the front, taking aim at the weak. Clayface on the rise, dropping villainous beats. Every verse cut deep, keep it cold, no retreat. Soldiers move low in the dark, no trace. Laugh at the cowards, trying to keep pace. Mike break them down, Clayface take the case. Scarsclub loyalty never erased. Mike David kingpin, soldiers never bend. Clayface mask queen, writing rhymes that transcend. Scars in the rhythm, no fake can contend. On the mic we reign till the very end.